I'll just say one thing, get ready for what's coming because Mississippi is much more surprising and much crazier than you could ever imagine, and when you get to the end of the data, you'll understand exactly what I mean. 50. The highest point is surprisingly low. When you think of mountains, you probably imagine snow-capped peaks in the Rockies, right? Well, Mississippi's highest point, Woodall Mountain, challenges that definition with a smile. Located in the far northeast corner of the state in Tishomingo County, this mountain stands at exactly 806 feet, 246 meters above sea level. It's actually part of the Appalachian foothills, representing the very southwestern extremity of that massive mountain range. When I hiked it, which honestly is more of a gentle uphill walk than a hike, I learned it was originally called Yow Hill. 49. The world's longest man-made beach. If you drive down Highway 90 along the Gulf Coast, you are looking at an engineering marvel. The stretch of sand from Biloxi to Gulfport isn't entirely natural. It is actually the largest man-made beach in the world, stretching for a whopping 26 miles, 42 kilometers. This sandy shoreline was created to protect the seawall and the road from the impact of hurricanes and erosion. The sand is regularly replenished because the natural drift would wash it away otherwise. 48. The Legend of the Singing River. In the southeastern part of the state flows the Pascagoula River, often called the Singing River. Geographically, it is unique because it is the largest river in the contiguous 48 states that remains unchanneled and undammed, allowing it to flow naturally from its source to the Gulf. But the singing part is a real acoustic phenomenon. Locals and visitors have reported a low humming sound rising from the waters, often attributed to a legend of the Pascagoula tribe chanting as they walked into the river to avoid capture. 47. An ancient forest turned to stone. Just outside the town of Flora, you'll find the Mississippi Petrified Forest, a place that feels like stepping back 36 million years. This is the only petrified forest in the eastern United States that is arguably as significant as the famous ones out west. The geography here tells a violent story. These massive logs didn't grow here. They were driftwood washed down by a prehistoric river system during the Oligocene epoch. Over eons, they were buried in sands and silts, and eventually, silica replaced the wood cells, turning them into stone. I was amazed to see that these aren't small branches. 46. The catfish capital of the world. Geography isn't just about rocks, it's about how the land shapes the economy. The Mississippi Delta's flat, clay-heavy terrain is perfect for holding water, which led to the rise of aquaculture in Belzoni, Mississippi. This small town produces more farm-raised catfish than any other single place on Earth, earning it the title Catfish Capital of the World. In fact, at its peak, this region was responsible for producing over 60% of all U.S. farm-raised catfish. The landscape here is dotted with square, water-filled ponds visible from space. Before continuing, be sure to subscribe and leave a like to keep discovering the strange and incredible geography of our entire country. 45. The shifting ground of Yazoo clay. Speaking of that delta soil, let's talk about the infamous Yazoo clay. To geologists and homeowners in central Mississippi, this stuff is a nightmare. It is an expansive clay formation that stretches across a large band of the state. This fat clay absorbs water like a sponge, expanding drastically when wet and shrinking when dry. This geological trait causes the ground to heave and shift with the seasons, leading to cracked foundations, buckled highways, and roller coaster roads. 44. The ridge of the Natchez Trace. The Natchez Trace Parkway is more than just a scenic drive. It follows a distinct geological ridge. This ancient trail, used by Native Americans and later by boatmen, Kaintucks, walking home from New Orleans, follows a geological path of least resistance along a ridgeline that separates different watersheds. Because it stays on the high ground to avoid the swampy lowlands and cypress sloughs, it offers a cross-section of Mississippi's diverse terrain. When you drive it, you are literally riding the spine of the state's history. 43. The wind-blown Loess Bluffs. On the eastern edge of the Mississippi Delta, there is a stark geological wall known as the Loess Bluffs. These steep hills, which run roughly from Vicksburg north toward Memphis, are made of loess, pronounced luss, which is wind-blown dust deposited during the ice ages. When the glaciers to the north melted, the resulting mud dried up and was blown by winds into these massive piles. What's fascinating is that Loess soil has a vertical grain, meaning it can stand in almost sheer vertical cliffs without collapsing, but it erodes easily easily if water hits it from the top. Walking through the sunken roads in Vicksburg, you are surrounded by these high earthen walls that were literally blown there by prehistoric winds. 42. The Birdfoot Delta shape. We call it the Delta, but the Mississippi River Delta, where it meets the Gulf, has a very specific shape known to geologists as a Birdfoot Delta. Unlike the Nile's triangular delta, the Mississippi's sediment deposition created long, finger-like distributaries that resemble a bird's claw extending into the Gulf of Mexico. However, this land is disappearing. Because the river is now levee-bound and channeled, the sediment that used to replenish these marshes is being shot straight out off the continental shelf. 41. The dipping layers of the Sparta aquifer. Deep beneath the surface lies the Sparta aquifer, a critical source of fresh groundwater for the state. Geographically, Mississippi sits on layers of sediment that dip southward toward the Gulf of Mexico like a stack of pancakes tilted on a plate. The Sparta sand formation outcrops surfaces in the northern parts of the state where it catches rainwater and then dips deep underground as it goes south. By the time you pump that water up in central Mississippi, it has traveled underground for thousands of years, filtered through miles of sand and clay. 40. The Migrating Barrier Islands. Off the coast, the Mississippi-Alabama Barrier Islands, like Ship Island, Horn Island, and Petit Bois, are not stationary. These islands are literally moving westward due to the literal drift, a current that pushes sand along the coast. Over the last century, maps show these islands shrinking and shifting their positions significantly. Ship Island, for instance, was actually cut in half by Hurricane Camille in 1969, forming West Ship and East Ship, only to be artificially reunited later. Standing on the white sands of Horn Island, it's wild to think that the ground beneath you is transient, slowly marching toward Louisiana while being battered by tropical storms. 39. The shallow bowl of the Ross Barnett. Just northeast of Jackson lies the Ross Barnett Reservoir, a massive 33,000-acre body of water. But here is the geographical kicker. It is incredibly shallow for its size, with an average depth of only about 12 feet. It was created by damming the Pearl River, but because the local topography is relatively flat, the lake spreads out wide rather than deep. This shallow depth means the water heats up incredibly fast in the summer, influencing the local microclimate and making it a haven for aquatic life that loves warm water. It also means that during high winds, the res, as locals call it, can get surprisingly choppy and dangerous in minutes because shallow water creates steeper waves. 38. The Little Grand Canyon is eating a highway. In Marion County, there is a geological anomaly called Red Bluff, often nicknamed Mississippi's Little Grand Canyon. It is a massive erosion feature created by the Pearl River eating away at the high terrace banks. The result is a stunning canyon of bright red, orange, and purple soil that drops about 150 feet. But this geography is aggressive. The canyon is expanding so rapidly that it has already devoured parts of Highway 587, forcing the state to move the road multiple times. 37. Appalachian Echoes in Tishomingo. I mentioned Woodall Mountain earlier, but the entire Tishomingo State Park area is a geographical outlier for the state. While most of Mississippi is coastal plain or sedimentary clay, Tishomingo features massive sandstone outcroppings and limestone bluffs that look like they belong in Tennessee or North Carolina. This is because the geology here effectively is Appalachian. Bear Creek carves a canyon through these Paleozoic rocks, creating a landscape of boulders and cliffs that you can't find anywhere else in the state. I've gone rock climbing there, and it's surreal to be gripping solid sandstone in a state known mostly for mud and river bottoms. 36. The variable abyss of the Mississippi River. The depth of the Mississippi River is a constant source of geographical debate because it changes so drastically. At Vicksburg, where the river makes a massive bend, the channel is scoured deep by the current. While the average depth varies, during the historic 2011 flood, the river gauge reached over 57 feet, and the scour holes at the bottom of the channel can be significantly deeper, sometimes exceeding 100 feet in specific bends. The volume of water moving past Vicksburg is mind-boggling, often surpassing 1 million cubic feet per second. 35. The volcano under the Capitol. You might want to hold onto your seat for this one. The capital city, Jackson, sits directly on top of an extinct volcano. Known to geologists as the Jackson Volcano, this massive subterranean peak lies about 2,900 feet, 880 meters beneath the city streets, with its peak roughly located under the Mississippi Coliseum. Don't worry about an eruption though. It has been extinct for about 66 million years. It was an active volcanic island during the Cretaceous period when when this part of the world was covered by a shallow sea. 34. The earth-moving record of the Tenn-Tom. In the northeast corner of the state, there is a waterway that represents a feat of engineering larger than the Panama Canal. The Tennessee-Tombigbee Waterway, or Tenn-Tom, connects the Tennessee River to the Tombigbee River, creating a shortcut to the Gulf of Mexico. Geographically, this meant slicing through the divide between two massive river basins. To build it, engineers had to move 310 million cubic yards of earth, which is roughly 100 million cubic yards, more than was moved for the Panama Canal. 33. The ancient sea floor of the Black Belt. Driving through northeast Mississippi, near Tupelo and Starkville, the landscape abruptly changes from red clay hills to flat, dark, rich grassland. You have entered the Black Belt, or Black Prairie. This distinct geographical strip is actually the exposed bottom of an ancient Cretaceous sea. The soil here is dark and calcareous, chalky, because it is formed from the decayed remains of billions of microscopic sea creatures. Because the soil is so alkaline and thin over the chalk bedrock, trees struggle to grow here, historically creating a natural prairie in the middle of a forest-heavy state. It's a stripe of the Great Plains transplanted into the Deep South. 32. The Giants of Sky Lake. In the Delta, near Belzoni, there is a hidden swamp called Sky Lake that shelters some of the oldest living things in eastern North America. While most of Mississippi was logged in the early 20th century, this specific low-lying oxbow was too difficult to harvest. As a result, it contains ancient bald cypress trees that are over 1,000 years old. Some of these giants have circumferences of nearly 47 feet. Geographically, this spot is a time capsule. The shallow water and specific soil conditions preserve these trees through centuries of storms and droughts. 31st, the salt domes of the Pine Belt. Down in the Pine Belt region, southeast Mississippi, the ground hides massive columns of salt known as salt domes. These are pillars of salt that have pushed up from deep underground layers, piercing the overlying rock. They are geologically crucial because they are impermeable. Near the town of Petal, these domes are used to store massive amounts of natural gas and liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, in hollowed-out caverns created by dissolving the salt with water. 30. The Dixie Alley weather funnel. We often hear about Tornado Alley in the plains, but Mississippi is the heart of a distinct and dangerous geographical phenomenon known as Dixie Alley. Unlike the open plains, the geography here, high humidity from the Gulf interacting with cold fronts, combined with hilly forested terrain, creates a specific type of storm system. Tornadoes here are often rain-wrapped, invisible to the eye, and terrifyingly tend to occur at night or during the cool season, November to February. 29. The Ghost Town, stranded by the river. Rodney, Mississippi was once a bustling port city that nearly became the state capital. Today, it is a ghost town, and geography is the assassin. In the late 1800s, the Mississippi River changed its course, moving several miles to the west due to a sandbar buildup. This left Rodney high and dry, transforming it from a riverside commercial hub into a landlocked village surrounded by swamps. The old Presbyterian church still has a Union cannonball stuck in its facade, but the river that brought the gunboat there is long gone. It is a haunting lesson on how riverside civilizations are entirely at the mercy of fluvial geomorphology. 28. The Ridge of the Chickasaw. While the delta is flat, the Pontotoc Ridge in northeast Mississippi offers a rugged counterpoint. This high, narrow divide separates the flat Black Prairie from the flatwoods to the west. Geologically, it is composed of erosion-resistant sands and sandstones from the Cretaceous period, specifically the Ripley Formation. Because these rocks are harder than the chalk of the prairie or the clay of the flatwoods, they remained standing as a ridge while the surrounding land eroded away. 27. The rainforest coal beneath the Red Hills. In Choctaw County, the Red Hills mine exposes a geological secret. Mississippi used to be a tropical rainforest. The mine extracts lignite, soft brown coal, from the Wilcox Group, a geological formation dating back to the Paleogene period, about 60 million years ago. This coal was formed from peat bogs in a hot, wet climate similar to the Amazon. The geography here is literally made of compressed ancient plants. This low-grade coal is burned right at the mouth of the mine to generate electricity. It's fascinating to realize that the electricity powering a modern AC unit comes from burning a prehistoric swamp that existed millions of years before humans walked the earth. 26. The man-made depth of Gulfport. The The Mississippi Sound is naturally shallow, averaging only about 10 to 20 feet deep, which is too shallow for massive ocean-going cargo ships. To make Gulfport a viable shipping hub, a massive channel has to be constantly dredged through the sound. The Gulfport Harbor Channel is maintained at a depth of roughly 36 feet and extends nearly 16 miles out into the Gulf to reach deep water. This is a constant battle against the geography of the Sound, which naturally wants to fill that trench with sand and silt. 25. The volcanic ash of the Blue Glue. In Monroe and Itawamba counties, you can find deposits of bentonite clay, often called blue glue by locals because of its sticky, dense nature when wet. This isn't just normal mud, it is chemically altered volcanic ash that blew over from massive eruptions in the western United States tens of millions of years ago. It settled in the ancient seas that covered Mississippi, turning into a clay that swells massively when it touches water. It's incredibly valuable for drilling mud and foundry molds. 24. The erased town of Grand Gulf. Just like Rodney, Grand Gulf was a victim of the river, but in a more violent way. Once a thriving cotton port rivaling nearby Natchez, the town was slowly devoured by the Mississippi River's lateral erosion. As the river current slammed into the banks, it ate away the town block by block over decades. By the time the Civil War ended, much of the town had already fallen into the water. Today, Grand Gulf Military Park preserves what little is left, but the main business district of the old town is now underwater or replaced by sandbars. 23. The sunk lands of the New Madrid quake. In the far northwest corner of the state, geology gets shaky. During the massive New Madrid earthquakes of 1811 to 1812, the ground in parts of the Mississippi River Valley liquefied and collapsed. While the most famous result is Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee, Mississippi has its own scars known as the sunk lands near the river. These are areas where the earth dropped, creating swamps and lakes where dry land used to be. The violence of that event caused the Mississippi River to flow backward briefly and permanently altered the drainage patterns of the region. 22. The severed connection of Deer Island. Deer Island, located just off the coast of Biloxi, offers a glimpse into the Ice Age past. It wasn't always an island. During the Pleistocene epoch, when sea levels were lower, it was a ridge connected to the mainland, part of the ancient shoreline. As sea levels rose at the end of the last Ice Age, the low-lying land behind this ridge flooded, creating the Biloxi Bay and turning the ridge into an island. Geologically, it is a remnant beach ridge, and without a natural source of new sand, since it's detached from the literal drift of the coast, it is slowly eroding away, shrinking bit by bit every year. 21. The delta is not a delta. Geographers love being pedantic, and here is a big one. The Mississippi Delta, the region in northwest MS famous for blues and cotton, is not a geological delta. A true delta is formed at the mouth of a river, like down in Louisiana. The region in Mississippi is actually an alluvial floodplain. It was formed by the Mississippi and Yazoo rivers flooding over thousands of years, dropping nutrient-rich topsoil they carried from the Midwest. It is shaped like a leaf, bounded by the river on the west and the bluffs on the east. 20. The honeycomb channels of the Pearl. The Pearl River, which forms the border between Mississippi and Louisiana at the state's toe, has a unique geological structure in its lower basin. Unlike the single massive channel of the Mississippi, the lower Pearl fractures into a complex braided stream system known as the Honey Island Swamp. The river splits into East Pearl, West Pearl, and countless smaller distributaries, creating a maze of cypress tupelo swamps. This geography made it a perfect hideout for pirates and outlaws in the 19th century, because it was nearly impossible to navigate if you didn't know the specific channel depths. It's a hydrological labyrinth. 19. The lignite bluffs of the Doak Stand. Along the Natchez Trace near the Canton area, there is a spot historically known as Doak's Stand. Geologically, this area sits on the Cockfield Formation, which is rich in lignite and sand. If you look closely at the cut banks in this region, you can sometimes see dark bands of lignite, immature coal layered between the sands. 18. The Great Wall of the Levees. We cannot talk about Mississippi geography without mentioning the most massive man-made geographical feature in the state, the Mississippi River levee system. Following the catastrophic Great Flood of 1927, the landscape was permanently altered to prevent the river from reclaiming the delta. These levees are essentially artificial mountain ridges made of earth, standing up to 40 feet high and stretching for hundreds of miles. They have severed the river from its natural floodplain, stopping the deposition of fresh soil but allowing the delta to be inhabited safely. 17. The Divide of the Tennessee. Up in the far northeast corner near Burnsville, there is a geographical line in the sand that determines the fate of every drop of rain. This is the Tennessee River Divide. It is surprisingly close to the northern border, yet it dictates a massive hydrological split. Rain falling just a few miles north of this ridge flows into the Tennessee River, eventually taking a long detour north to the Ohio River before joining the Mississippi. Rain falling just a few inches to the south, however, begins a long lazy journey down the Tombigbee waterway directly to the Gulf of Mexico. 16. The pressure of the Artesian coast. Along the Mississippi Gulf Coast, early settlers discovered something miraculous. If you drilled a hole, fresh water would shoot out of the ground without a pump. This is due to the Artesian pressure created by the state's dipping geology. The aquifers that catch rainwater in the hills dip deep under the coast, trapped beneath impermeable clay layers. By the time this water reaches Biloxi or Gulfport, the pressure from the elevation difference is immense. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, this geography created a culture of public fountains and flowing wells where pure, cold water sprang eternally from the earth. 15. The heart of the state. Geographers love to pinpoint the exact center of things, and for Mississippi, that heart beats in Leake County. Just about 9 miles west-northwest of the town of Carthage, you will find the geographic center of Mississippi. While there isn't a massive neon sign pointing to it, the spot represents the equilibrium point of the state's irregular shape. The landscape here is a transition zone, blending the red clay hills of the north with the sandy pine woodlands of the south. 14. The Little Mountain of the Trace. Driving the Natchez Trace Parkway, you expect rolling hills, but at Jeff Busby Park, you hit a geological anomaly known as Little Mountain. Rising to 603 feet, it is one of the highest points in the state, but its prominence is what makes it special. It is part of the Ackerman Formation, a ridge of sand and iron-rich rock that resisted erosion while the softer lands around it wore away. The view from the top is one of the few places in the state where you can see for 20 miles in every direction. 13. The Ironclad Trap of the Yazoo. The Yazoo River is geographically unique because it is a sluggish river with a deep, muddy channel and steep banks, earning it a dark reputation during the Civil War. The geography here created a perfect trap for naval warfare. The river floor is littered with the wreckage of 29 sunken ships, including the famous ironclad USS Cairo. The narrow, winding nature of the river allowed Confederates to deploy torpedoes, underwater mines effectively, as there was no room for Union ships to maneuver. 12. The glacial imports of the river bars. Here is a secret that rockhounds love. You can find pieces of Minnesota and Wisconsin in Mississippi. If you walk the gravel bars of the Mississippi River near Natchez or Vicksburg, you might find Lake Superior agates. These beautiful red and white banded gemstones were not formed in Mississippi. They were ripped from the volcanic rocks of the north by glaciers during the ice ages, carried down by the melting floodwaters, and deposited thousands of miles south in the river gravels. 11. The geology that sparked the oil boom. In 1939, the geography of Mississippi changed the economy forever at the Tinsley oil field. Before this, Mississippi was thought to be devoid of oil, but a geologist noticed a surface anomaly in Yazoo County, a piece of the Moody's Branch Marl Formation that was much higher than it should have been. This hinted at a salt dome or structural uplift deep underground. They drilled based on this geographical hunch and struck black gold. The Tinsley field turned out to be a massive trap created by a deep faulted structure. Remember to subscribe and like to keep learning amazing information about each state in our beautiful country. 10. The rare savanna of Grand Bay. On the coast near the Alabama border lies the Grand Bay Savanna, one of the largest remaining contiguous tracts of wet pine savanna in the world. This is a geographical rarity. The land here is flat, wet, and historically swept by natural fires. This combination created a landscape that looks like a grassy prairie but is dotted with carnivorous plants like pitcher plants and sundews. It is an open forest where trees are sparse because of the high water table and fire frequency. Walking through it feels prehistoric. 9. The mound that cheated height. Emerald Mound, located near the Natchez Trace, is the second largest pre-Columbian earthwork in the United States, second only to Monk's Mound in Illinois. But here's the geographical secret. The builders cheated. They didn't build the whole thing from scratch. They found a natural Loess hill left behind by the Ice Age winds and sculpted the top of it flat, then added artificial fill to the sides to square it off. 8. The fossil reefs of Blue Springs. In Union County, near the Toyota plant at Blue Springs, the ground is literally made of sea monsters. The Coon Creek Formation here exposes a layer of soil from the late Cretaceous period that is packed with perfectly preserved marine fossils. We are talking about crabs, mollusks, and swimming reptiles that lived 70 million years ago. The geography here is special because the sediment is a sandy marl that never hardened into solid rock. This means you can often pick fossils right out of the creek banks with your hands, and they still have their original iridescent shell material. 7. The T-shape of Cat Island. Barrier islands are usually long and skinny, running parallel to the coast. Cat Island, however, looks like a giant T. This bizarre shape is due to a unique geographical conflict. The eastern leg of the island is built by the east-west longshore current, just like the other islands. But the western crossbar of the T is built by currents coming out of the Mississippi River Delta to the south. These two water forces collide right at Cat Island, depositing sand in two different directions perpendicular to each other. 6. The Niagara of the South. I bet you didn't know Mississippi has waterfalls. Lots of them. At Clark Creek Natural Area in Wilkinson County, the geography takes a dramatic turn. The terrain here is composed of steep Loess bluffs that can rise up to 200 feet. Because Loess soil is highly erodible but can stand in vertical walls, the water has carved deep, narrow canyons. The result is a park with over 50 waterfalls, some dropping more than 30 feet. It is a strenuous hike that feels more like Costa Rica than Mississippi. 5. The Impossible Flatwoods. Running like a gray stripe through the northeast part of the state is a region called the Flatwoods. Geographically, this is a belt of stiff, gray, impermeable clay, the Porter's Creek clay. This soil is so dense and acidic that it historically repelled settlers. Water wouldn't drain, crops wouldn't grow deep roots, and roads turned into impassable gray sludge. Even today, if you look at a satellite map, you can see this band as a distinct, sparsely populated corridor of timberland. It is a region defined entirely by the difficulty of its dirt, acting as a natural barrier to civilization for nearly 2 centuries. 4. The impact of Kilmichael. In Montgomery County, near the town of Kilmichael, there is a strange circular structure about 6 miles wide. For years, geologists were puzzled by the shattered and faulted rocks found there. Today, it is widely accepted as an ancient meteorite impact structure. Millions of years ago, a space rock slammed into what was then a shallow sea or coastal plain, shattering the earth and creating a central uplift of rock that should be thousands of feet deeper. 3. The nuclear secret of the Salt Dome. Here's the most explosive secret on the list. In Lamar County, deep within the Tatum Salt Dome, the US government detonated 2 nuclear bombs. This was Project Dribble in the 1960s. They needed to test if nuclear blasts could be decoupled, hidden in underground cavities. Because the Salt Dome is a massive, self-healing, impermeable geological structure, it was the perfect container. The salmon and sterling shots melted the salt into a glass-lined cavity thousands of feet down. 2. The ghost forests of the coast. If you paddle through the marshes near the Pascagoula or Pearl Rivers, you will see skeletal gray trunks of dead cypress and pine trees standing in the water. These are ghost forests, and they are a geographical warning sign. As sea levels rise and the land naturally sinks, salt water is intruding further inland, killing these freshwater trees. This isn't ancient history. It is happening right now. The geography of the coastline is retreating. These dead sentinels mark where the dry land used to be just a few decades ago. A stark visual of the rapid geographical change reshaping the Gulf Coast. 1. The Mississippi Embayment, the ancient ocean. And here we are, the #1 geographical fact that explains everything else. Why is Mississippi made of so much sand, clay, and river silt? Why are there whale fossils in the middle of the state? Because practically the entire state is a filled-in ocean bay known as the Mississippi Embayment. Millions of years ago, the Gulf of Mexico didn't end at the current coast. It extended all the way north to Illinois. The coastline was near Cairo, Illinois. Over eons, the sea levels rose and fell, and the ancestral Mississippi River dumped unimaginable amounts of sediment into this massive bay, slowly filling it in from north to south. Every hill you drive over, every clay deposit, and every sandy ridge is just a layer of filled dirt dumped into this ancient inland sea. The state of Mississippi is, geologically speaking, a reclamation project by the river against the ocean. We are living on the landfill of the continent. After learning these 50 facts about Mississippi, tell us, which one did you like the most, or which one surprised you? Leave it in the comments and let's see how many of us picked the same fact. If you think we missed one or want to add something, we'd love to hear from you. Your comments help us make every video even better. And speaking of videos, here's another one on screen so you can keep exploring the geography of our beautiful country. Oh, and sorry if there were any mispronunciations. We're always trying to make each video better than the last. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe and give it a like so we can keep learning together. See you in the next video.